Well, greetings friends and welcome back. Today we're having a look at the Krait MkII, often requested, much anticipated, and for me as well. If you haven't subscribed as yet, hit the subscribe button. One click for you means the world to me. Let's get on with this video, shall we? It's probably going to be a long one, so strap in. Now, as you know, if you've flown this ship for any amount of time, it has much more detail than some of the previous ships because it is one of the more recent ships and they generally tend to have given more thought and effort to the interior of the ships. And you can already see lots of little signs, squiggles, things attached to the walls. Whew, I've got my work cut out on this one. So let's chop it up into bits and start over here. Now, unlike the other ones where it's sort of a flat projector, this one looks a bit more like a steel drum. I just need some drumsticks to get that going. But it is about the same size, about 60 centimeters in diameter as the previous ships. And over here we have some sort of a strange strut system that's holding it into place, and a cable that runs out of the back of that, runs along here to a panel that shows something. It's got a Falcon de Lacy sticker, which you can't read because it's too low res. And then the cable keeps going through what looks very much like a Velcro strap. So nice to see that both duct tapes and Velcro are still a thing in space. Continuing down here, it runs all the way down into the bottom of the ship and disappears under the floor there. If we then come back to this cross beam and head up, you'll see a fairly well detailed thing there. It says 456, not sure what that means, maybe some attachment points for something. Definitely a human-sized grab handle, albeit a flat one, so it wouldn't be all that comfortable, I wouldn't imagine, but it is just for anchoring yourself as you're moving around in 0G. Little panel up there that says Mark II. More wiring running across the top there and into the rear of the ship. We'll have a closer look at that in a minute. And these bulkhead sort of things that end seemingly quite abruptly at where the glass of the cockpit is supposed to go. And continuing around the other side, we have another label that again is too low res to actually make out. Seems to be that it was checked by someone, probably for compliance as it was built, although with the amount of wiring that's just kicking around everywhere, I'm not sure about that one. A wire that's plugged into the rear side of the console and comes up over here is strapped on with some duct tape. Beautiful. And heads on up here, something written on it that I can't make out. Probably a serial number. Another serial number there, probably for the panel. Some proper sized, maybe on the large side, but proper sized Phillips head screws I should say. And here is 1, 2, and 3 from the corresponding on the other side. Another label there that's too low res to read. And a repeat of the grab handle and the Mark II and the bulkhead up there. I'll have a look at that in a minute, a bit more closer up. So let's head back from the console and have a look at the rest of the cockpit. So starting over here on the left hand side, this main strut has got some more low res stickers on it and a GT symbol. Another sticker down there. Lots of greebling and paneling and hooks and attachments, and they've really gone to town with the interior detail on these new ships, which is very much appreciated by you guys. I'm sure is certainly appreciated by me, even to the point where this one looks like it's got some footprints on it, or half boot prints. I don't know if that comes through with the reflection, but clearly the commander steps on this to try and get into their seat. I mean, seriously, they've really gone all out. This thing says, in case of emergency, read some low-res font. Not sure exactly what else it's supposed to say. And over here, a half torn off sticker with the same sort of Falcon de Lacy Falcon on there. Some piping in the wall. And some green lights, which look pretty cool, even though they're low res. More piping and cabling. Some attachment lugs for some equipment, probably another fire extinguisher or something. This is quite interesting. A max weight rating. That's just off the side of a truck by the looks of things. Interesting. FD down there. A bit of an air vent, which has a very small interior, but doesn't really go anywhere beyond that, but certainly interesting to see regardless that they've given it some depth. There's these small canisters, 2 of them attached to the wall. Not sure if they're supposed to be batteries or doesn't have a contact on the other side, but They almost look like very large cigarette lighters, probably quadruple the size of a cigarette lighter though. They're probably about 4 inches in length, roughly speaking. There's another one of those in case of emergency, low res things. This one's even smaller, definitely can't read that. Here's some curly, what looks like either telephone wire or more likely audio cabling running in and out of these struts, which I think is really cool, because if you were doing this yourself, that's probably exactly how you would do it to secure the cabling to the wall. So they've obviously thought of how this would be done in real life and plugged into whatever that module there is, perhaps with a receiving antenna or something, not really sure. Now then, if we head around the back of the commander's chair, we see some more wiring plugged into this console here, which has a way too small number pad. That's nearly the size of a watch's number pad if you had an old calculator watch back in the 80s, and a cable that's plugged through a button, so we start to see some graphical inconsistencies down here. Authorized personnel only is what that looks like, upside down, and some other various greebling, again with the dirty walls. It gives it a really nice sort of texture that's like a brushed aluminium, but it's dirty, it's got fingerprints on it, it's got maybe footprints on it. Very nice, it looks very lived in. Okay, on the other side of the commander, we have more of these things. Now, this is the same module as on the other side, but it doesn't have an audio cable plugged into this one. So that's just clean. More cablings down here, cables and probably pipes. These are about 3 inches in diameter for the two middle and about 1 inch on the edges. So I'm imagining those edge ones are more likely to be cables. Some more cabling and piping down there. Still a low res in case of emergency warning, a repeat of the max weight sticker, and a box from Falcon de Lacy. Probably just says the in case of emergency one up the top. Well, we can't read what that says. And if we stick our heads inside, there's nothing in there. What a surprise. But it looks like it's made out of maybe leather or some sort of polycarbonate plastic or something, strapped in with some very thin, less than a pinky width sort of straps. And that vent is glitching itself to death behind it. I didn't realize these louvers are actually numbered, which is quite interesting. There's arrows and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same interior. Okay, I'm looking in air vents now. What am I doing? And over here we have a repeat of the same console, this time oriented the right way, and no wires going into it this time, but exactly the same console, exactly the same stickers. And as we approach the stairs here, we get to the rear, where we start to see some graphical abnormalities with that display floating. And we'll try and get as close to these bits and bobs as humanly possible. This is going to be a challenge. Now we'll just skip ahead and look at the rear of the cockpit itself here, which looks like there's some sort of a panel here that comes down. Ow. Can't see what's on top of it. Hang on, I've got an idea. So there you go. If I just lift up the headset, you can see what's inside the panel and that it's fairly actually empty. Doesn't have much going on there at all, but it does certainly look like it should come down for some reason, whether that's a meeting table or something else, I'm not really sure. At the very back of the ship, I haven't been able to get to floor height just because of the camera restrictions, but I'll show you what this entire sort of console looks like down the back. So we have over here some low-res stuff, presumably indicating statuses of things, but it's absolutely floating off the edge of that display. My guess is it's supposed to be a holographic projection of some description. Over here we have another similar holographic projection, which doesn't actually say anything that we can read, but again is popped up off the projector itself quite some distance. Maybe a galaxy map, star chart, something, who knows what is going on over here. And that looks like maybe some pictures of nearby galaxies or star clusters, and oh, who knows. And there's obviously clearly a starport down the bottom corner there. Very low res, a bit janky, pretty stretched, kind of unreadable. I'd love to see the original image that they used for this, so that we could actually discern what this is supposed to mean, but there's a look at that. Behind that on the main screen, we have a display that says drive unit view over here, stuff that is really hard to read, can't really make that out. And you can see the rest of those acronyms and things for yourself, in addition to a chart pointing at a thing. On the other side, we have a top-down view of the crate with 80, maybe 1% showing there of a thing, and some information down here which is taken pretty much straight from the outfitting screen of, is that a mining laser? Not really sure what that is, and you can probably tell me in the comments, but that's taken straight from the outfitting screen. And over here we have one that says Galnet News, again in very low res, and taken basically just as a screenshot from some random screen and plopped here on the back wall. Up above that panel is a glassed off panel with a bunch of wires and things sticking through it. Yeah, fairly uninteresting, but you can see the mess of wires there if I shove my head through it. Looks like the back of everyone's PC, really. Alright, now the camera gets a bit janky over here, so I'm sort of on a strange angle, but I'm going to show you what the very rear of this section looks like, and in towards the door there. So around the corner is an air vent system, which if we stick our head through, we can just see the other side of that exit. So I'll get to those in a second. Interestingly, there is an actual bulkhead here, which is quite interesting compared to the other ships. They don't actually have a texture there stopping you from seeing, but rest assured we're going to shove our head through that no matter what. Back here is what probably looks like another holographic emitter, if I know my emitters by now, and the door itself, which is the proper height and about 4 foot across, roughly. There is more paneling there that says NS2 plugin with a version number, airlock numbers. Presumably this is talking about the actual doors themselves. Some system stuff, some more system stuff. Yeah, more system stuff. I'll try and get closer to that, but this is pretty janky already. The other thing that's interesting is you can see through there's a whole area behind that glass which is showing some interior workings of the ship. Not exactly sure what that is supposed to be, but certainly I'll see if I can stick my head through that if I can get close enough. Right, and if we then have a look at the other side, this part is largely a repeat of the previous section. There is that area there again behind the glass that we can't quite get to, the same large piping going up into the ceiling itself, and the same systems readout as we saw on the other side. But interestingly, just mirrored, so a bit lazy, but again, you're not supposed to be back here until spacelegs is a thing, so I'll forgive them for that. Repeat of the same door, says level 1 over there. That is not backwards, but I can't get quite close enough to read that from this vantage point. Another vent and holographic projector, and that is about it from this vantage point. I'm going to try and get closer to that crate, but you can see that little crate model sitting up there is pretty cool. It's about size of a hand, let's say, roughly speaking. Alright, I managed to glitch myself over here into the corner next to the co-pilot seat. This one does seem to be on some sort of maybe slidey rail, just a little bit. You imagine that you couldn't stand on the glass to get in there, so that would probably make some sense. Now in terms of their panels, they are an octagonal shape there. Probably a little bit smaller, maybe 30 by 30 centimeters in diameter. And the rest of the panel sort of goes from here, and I can't really reach the other side, I don't think, but over there. So a good maybe 2.5 meters in width. Above the co-pilot we have a bunch of push to open lockers, a sticker there that's repeated from the rear door, air conditioning, there's a sticker that's not meant to look like that on the wire, and some wiring going all the way around. Now interestingly, there is also this little hatch. I have been up there and there is nothing to see beyond what I'm showing you now. So it is purely some flat textures and it sort of goes nowhere other than what you can see. A bit of a grab handle there for you to climb up into to have access to whatever that thing is supposed to be. Presumably those gigantic side sections on both sides. I'm not sure if the other pilot has got one. I'll have a look at that in a sec. Directly overhead from the co-pilot seat, you can see this readout here. This small one is about 1.5 feet in width, and it's exactly the same as the rear panels that we've seen before. Some lights and switches, big switches here that say something. Sorry, I can't read that. Maybe you can and tell me what it is. And what does from a distance look like a status indicator, but it is actually just a Hardpoint catalog. Now next to the co-pilot we have this little outlet maybe, or speakers or something sitting down here. A giant cogwheel of a thing, which I'm not really sure what that's supposed to do. Some wiring or tubes down here, and a giant cylinder of CO2, presumably for some fire retardant reasons, and doesn't really attach to anything or go anywhere beyond that. And finally down here is a little screen that doesn't seem to display anything, but is obviously a readout for some system. On this side we have a large, what looks to be movable grab handle of some description. Seems to have some handle sort of textured in there for finger grips. Doesn't specifically seem to come out, but I don't know, it looks like it probably should. Not sure whether it's an emergency lever or just something to hang on to as you get yourself into the co-pilot chair, but it's a red thing. There's a texture glitching itself to death next to this pipe coming out, and if we take a sneaky peek outside this window, you can see the underside and front side of that giant side section of the crate. And I can actually shove my head into that side section, so if we do that, then you see where the hardpoint lives up there, and obviously where it would come down pretty much in front of the co-pilot's chair there. And we can also see a little bit more of the interior of that little section that I showed you earlier, which again just stops up here. There's no real texture on the floor of it, but it seems to be an access hatch for maintenance of the hardpoint, you would imagine. And inside this side console here, there's another one of those batteries or somethings, and another one of those same Falcon DeLacy boxes. And here is about as close as I can get to the crate, which is directly next to it. So you can see the old vector graphic crate from the 80s odd version of the game, which is sitting there pretty as a reminder of where the crate has come from, which is pretty awesome. And on the flip side of this console is just more status indicators. This one talks about rooms and statuses, and another repeat of that panel system that we see at the rear of the ship. Now moving back from this red grab handle, we have more very low resolution screens. So again, all this stuff is great, but it would definitely have to be upgraded for spacelegs. And here's a cool little Easter egg, probably what appears to be some sort of space version of a Rubik's Cube, just sitting there in the locker to pass the time when you're traveling to Sagittarius A and back. Some more empty lockers there with the doors open and nothing else in those, but there is another one of these things here. Maybe it's a bottle, I don't know. This one's actually much larger. It's probably about 8 or 9 inches in length for that one. And some bacon strips up there to hold stuff, and some more greebling and paneling up here, which there's not that much interesting going on, but certainly creates a sense of completeness and interest to these ships. I'll see if I can stick my head through this panel. Hang on. I keep going. There we are. So that is the inside. So if we look back, that's the glass. So this is the inside of that section that is repeated on the other side, showing you the interior workings of the ship, whatever those are. Looks like some sort of piston or something maybe. Not really sure, but that's what that is through that window that you can see. Whew, that was a challenge. Here's something a bit interesting. While I find myself next to Commander Headful, if you stick your head through this chair, you can actually see the back of her is totally rendered, and she is actually sitting in the seat, and there aren't any other plugs other than those ones at the back there, which presumably, you know, supply oxygen or something, but there's no corresponding plug in the back of her jacket, probably in the back of her spacesuit, but not the jacket. Let's see if we can get over to that chair over there. Alright, so over on this side of the ship, it's pretty much exactly the same as the other side. There is a push to open, which is quite interesting, but if we stick our head through it, you can see it is a repeat of the other one that is open on the other side, this time without the grab handles, but the same wires again, but clearly that is the access to the other hard point on the other side, which again, if we stick our head through here, maybe, you can see sticking out over there. So clearly it's a access point or maintenance hatch for the hard points, which is quite interesting. Also it says push to open, but clearly it slides. Okay, I'll let that one go. But some slightly different readouts on these panels here. Inside these lockers is another one of those batteries or drink bottles or whatever it is, no other Rubik's Cube, and a slightly different readout there, but again extremely low res and we can't really read it. And on the other side of this console, next to this co-pilot, is again more low res readouts, slightly different one here, and a coffee machine with I don't know, are they biscuits or pods, or is this an espresso machine? Hashtag not a sponsor, or what's going on, I'm not sure, but there's some DeLacy coasters there, which are pretty cool, and what's clearly meant to be an espresso machine for those long flights through space. So that's actually really kind of funny as a detail to add. One of the cups is gone, so clearly someone's had a coffee and forgotten to return the cup, which is cool. And the interior is non-existent, but a cool little detail to sit there on the back of the ship. I really like that one. That tickles me for some reason. And on the other side of that coffee machine and console is just another one of those boxes. Alright, now on these larger ships it does get much harder to actually get through the doors at the rear, but we can get through this one, so let's do that now. So it's a pretty thick sort of bulkhead kind of, thick sort of bulkhead door, and if we stick our face through it, you can see the flat panel bulkhead that we saw before and the landing gear. Well, the tracking is going to be a nightmare, and if we look straight through, then you can see the interior of the ship. Now that fighter bay behind the cargo bay is huge. Sorry about the tracking, this is as good as I can do. It's really, really massive. It's probably double the size of the cargo bay, I would say. It's very large, and there's definitely no way to really access the rear of the ship from here unless you really crawl past the side of that fighter bay. It'd be really hard to get into the rear. Above us we can see more of the hardpoints that are located immediately there behind the cockpit and above, and the struts of the landing gear, which appear to be yes, they are the elevator style, same as on the Python. So as that gear retracts, the elevator will come up, and we'll do that in a second as we launch. But in terms of perspective, you can see that even looking at this bulkhead, you have door 1 over here, door 2 over there, and the landing gear which would come here through the floor. So in fact you could envisage that the landing platform would end just on the other side of that bulkhead, and then you could step to either side to get into the pilot's chairs or the commander's chair. So it actually, from a logical perspective of the layout, it does actually make sense. So there's the landing gear, retracting right through my head as we launch. So very much so, this is designed to be the entry from the elevator. That was a little bit scary, to be honest. If we stick our face through the rear there, you can see as the ship leaves the starport, the sort of size of the thing. Now this is very, very wide. I would say probably in total 70 to maybe 80 meters in width. I'm sure someone will correct me on that, but that's how it feels. It feels like a much wider ship than it is long. Now we all know that the hardpoints deploy pretty much directly in front of the co-pilot there. So if we kick them off, you can see as they come out and rotate out. Now this is a medium-sized hardpoint, and it is about 2.5 to 3 meters, or about 10 feet in length from front to rear. So certainly pretty hefty. And obviously we're standing outside of the front of the ship there to show you where that hardpoint comes down. Now here I am standing right next to the rear of this hardpoint, and for the first time on this series I'm actually going to shove my head into the hardpoint itself, which is something I've never got the chance to do. So if we go through the rear first, you can just see an open sort of space, and then further out towards the front you can see the rear of the barrels. Now here very much so you can see the barrels are about good thickness of an arm, I would say, is how thick they are, and the strut system that holds the whole thing onto the hardpoint itself, and the cover over the hardpoint there, and some sort of battery system or something. What are those? Yeah, some sort of batteries maybe, or compensators, or I don't know what they are, something. And the strut that holds the hardpoint in place is the lower section is probably the length of a human thigh, and the whole round section there that's holding it onto the underside of the ship is probably a good 60 centimeters in diameter, and the whole thing is about that wide as it's held onto the ship itself. The other cool thing, of course, is shoving your head inside this thing as it fires. Ow, ow. move lamp. So if we spin it up, you can see the whole thing sort of vibrating viciously and the barrel retracting back and forth as it spits out shells, which is kind of cool and certainly an interesting perspective that you never really get to see again in Pancake version. You can see as that cools, quite interestingly, that whole thing retracts, which is a really cool little thing. But if we stick our head through it, oh, the tracking has an absolute panic attack. Anyway, but you can't really get any closer to that, but you can see how as it heats up, that actually retracts back to allow the hardpoint to cool down, which is pretty awesome. And to give you an idea of how far it is away, the commander's or the co-pilot chair is all the way over there, and to get over there I'd have to walk all the way over here, and I'm probably not going to make it. No, I'd have to, there, if I reach forward I can touch the bottom corner of where his knee would be. So it is quite some distance to that hard point, regardless of the fact that it comes down and looks like it's right in front of your face. And again, that heads-up display of that targeting reticule is actually as far as the space render is. So therefore, that targeting reticule is actually probably gigantic, but it goes out as far as space does. So I would say 100 meters away is probably where that targeting reticule is. So in reality, in diameter, it's probably, I don't know, 50 meters across. Again, some graphical stuff that you don't ever get to see in Pancake version. And again, if you stick your head outside, everything that's a head-up display disappears because it's only projected onto the glass itself, which is pretty cool tech when you think about it, that you have a panel that's this size and it's able to sort of relay 3D. I mean, in reality, where the pilot's sitting, they would be seeing that, like I am in VR, all the way out about 100 meters out in front of the ship, which is pretty awesome. And from this vantage point, we can also see the landing gear and what that looks like deployed. Let me just get some sun on it so we can see it a bit better. And if we retract that landing gear, you can see how that whole thing goes up and way up into the cockpit. Obviously, it glitches itself out as it goes through the cockpit itself, and it shouldn't be doing that. But you can see how that strut comes down and how the elevator folds out, which is a pretty cool little thing. It's unlike the Python where it just comes straight up and down. This one actually tilts backwards as it goes, so you wouldn't want to be on that elevator as it was retracting. You'd be getting thrown backwards into the stairs. And finally, the main struts that you see out the front there, I'm trying to get close to them, but this is about as good as it's going to get. This one I can maybe get a few steps closer to, so you can just see it's very, very low res piping and boxes with plus and plus on it. Looks like a battery but with two positive contacts, and some more stuff over there. I sort of can't get any closer to that, but it looks nicely weather beaten and weather worn, and you know, it looks like it's had a hard life, which is good. I mean, you don't want these ships to be completely clean. You want them to have done some stuff in the past. And finally, as a preview of what the next video is all about, let me show you this. So this is the underside interior view of the fighter getting shot out of the front of the ship. Pretty awesome. Hope you enjoyed that one. That was a long one, but there's a lot of interior, a lot of details to look at with the Krait. Obviously, the next video is going to be on the Taipan to shake things up a little bit. But I hope you enjoyed this one. Please subscribe if you haven't already. One click for you means a lot for me, and I'll see you in the next one. Fly safe, Commanders.